All right. Good morning again, guys. Let's get started. We have already 20 plus people in the room. Well, I hope you guys had a great weekend, and I hope you have a very good week, uh, despite all these restrictions and situation, tough situation again regarding coronavirus. Um, well, before I get started today we're gonna talk about one important topic on procurement and on operations in general, named total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership. But before I get started with the content, let me open here our syllabus. More important, actually, our schedule in order to align with you guys the next classes here.
Professor, may I ask a question?
Of course, Juliana.
Professor, when we will take the grades from the essays?
Yeah, that's a good question. The grades of the essays. If you are probably you are seeing my screen, you're gonna see that we have three different assessments, three different types of assessments within this course. We have participation, 30%. We have presentations, 35%, and we have final exam actually, 35%. Those essays that you guys are uploading week over week are related to participation. Okay, it's hard sometimes for me, of course, mostly considering that we are having online contact. It's hard for me to make an assessment of your participation during the classes. It would be subjective. I consider the participation, people that ask, people that comment, of course, but the most important part of the grade related to participation comes from the essays. Okay. In other words, I don't make the correction of the essays. I check the essays in order to check if if there is any copy paste, if the text is written according to the guidance. I mean, it's the idea here is to have not a summary based on bullet points, but dissertative text. Sorry. And this is the way I check the essays. In summary, guys, if you delivered the essay, you're gonna take 10 full grades in that delivery. Okay, if you deliver, you get 100% of the grade related to that delivery. Okay, unless, as I said, unless there is copy paste or there is a structure different from what we've agreed. I don't know if I answered your question, Juliana.
Yes, Professor. Thank you.
So, guys, it's a easy grade. Just a matter to read the material before the class. Remark: those essays is much more for you guys to get stimulated to read the materials before you get in the class. When you get in the class, for me, it's important that you have read some materials on the topic that will be approached. So the essays are something are at the end of the day a tool for you guys to put the ideas that you absorbed during the reading in the paper. Okay, it's much more for you. If you deliver, probably you get 100% of the grade. Okay. Yeah, I see here a very nice initiative from Rafael. This is another topic that I would like to approach in the presentation. So it's very good that you guys have contact among yourselves. I tried to create a forum, right, in order to, to create this environment in which you could exchange emails, WhatsApp, etc. But it was not successful. I understand maybe this tool is not appropriate for that. So WhatsApp group among you guys, I guess it's important because we are approaching, as you can see here in our schedule, we are approaching the beginning of, not that close yet, of course, but it's important for you guys to be already prepared. We are approaching in May, final part of first half of May, we're going to approach the moment in which you guys will deliver your classes. Okay, this first part of the course, I am the one that is providing the explanations, concepts, etc. And from May 11th onwards, you guys will be in charge of preparing a presentation and creating the environment to the discussion on the case that's going to be subject of each class. Okay, so pay attention to the schedule related to this. Okay, we have group 1 presenting on May 11th the first case, and then we follow week over week with the presentation of one group. Okay, of course, I will not let you guys presenting and not making any comment or interruption. Here it's just a matter to us to change a little bit the way we promote our class. The idea here is to put you guys as the main actors, as the stars in the presentation, but I will interrupt, I will make comments, I will take doubts over the class, okay, over your presentation. Of course, I have read already all of those papers and I am very familiar with those topics, so I believe I can make contributions on this. So get prepared, guys, for May 11th onwards. We are today here, March 16th. We're going to talk about price and total cost of ownership. After the class of today, we have a break. We get back to this course just in April 6th. Okay, so we're gonna be close to 3 weeks with no classes. Okay, and we're gonna get back with the basics of supply chain finance, which is very important from a financial perspective of procurement on April 6th. I will leave a Dropbox for you to deliver the essay related to the basics of supply chain finance, and we move this way. By the way, I don't know, maybe you don't have essays for supply chain finance. I have to check if I have material for that. I will check and let you know through week class if we're gonna have a deliver related to the basics of supply chain finance, or if you are free of any prior reading. Okay, and then when we get back in April 6th, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4 more meetings, more classes before getting the presentations started. So this is what I would like to show you, to highlight with you, to align with you. And of course, if you have any doubt, any question, you just let me know. Okay. All right. And just one additional comment. you are of course aware about this, but just to underline, we don't have midterm exam. We have just three, as I said, just three forms of assessment: participation grade, presentations during the case presentations, and a final exam. Okay. Of course, the final exam will encompass uh, uh, all the content of this course. It's not. Let me give you this in advance. It's not gonna be a multiple choice questions, or I don't know, question and answer exam. It's gonna be probably one topic. I'll give you one topic, and I will ask you guys to write about this, to make an essay. Okay, but during the time that we have here in the class. Okay, it's going to be something like that. One topic related to supply chain finance, or one topic related to total cost of ownership, or one topic related to inventory management, or one topic that encompasses everything, proposing you to try to make the link between all the content that we've walked through during this course. Okay, so you don't need to be desperate to review all the materials to wait for a multiple choice exam or a question and answer form exam, because you're gonna have one topic and you're gonna write down. You're gonna develop on this topic in a format of essay, as you're doing week over week with the materials that I am providing you. So if you are doing properly the essays, if you are attending the classes, my opinion, you don't need to have further concerns within the final exam. All right. Doubts, questions, suggestions, critics? No?
No, Professor, no doubts. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's get started then. Total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership. This topic is also quite important within operations, and mostly within procurement. Okay, and I will explain why. Let me just display my screen here for you again. Now there we are. Total cost of ownership. What does it mean? Price and total cost of ownership. We have two different concepts here. We have the concept of pricing, and we have the concept of total cost of ownership. Pricing is the process in which we price a product. Of course, we have our costs, direct costs, we have our indirect costs. We have the expected margin that we would like to make when you are in the market that allows you to make a markup. When you are in the market where you are allowed to make a markup. For example, Apple with the iPhones, or I don't know, Samsung with the televisions, they make a markup. They sell the iPhone or the Samsung QLED television with a markup. They establish the level of margin that they want to get in each sale. Okay, because they domain the market, because the offers are not that big, because they are market leader, etc. Remark that this type of pricing is quite different from a hardly competitive a hardly competitive market. For example, it's hard to believe that someone that sells or minério de ferro or petroleum may make a markup, or any other commodity like soybean or corn, if you like. Nobody works with markup. I don't sell a liter of fuel, if I am Petrobras, wishing to make a markup of 30 cents per liter or 20 cents per liter. In the case of Petrobras, it's possible because it's a monopoly. But talking about the international market, where we have several suppliers with dealing with a number of buyers, it's hard to believe that a commodity seller, a commodity provider, a commodity supplier may establish a markup, a margin that they want to get after direct and indirect costs. In this case, pricing will be much more linked to the current situation of the market. You're gonna sell at the level in which the market is operating. This level can give you a margin that is above direct and indirect costs, or eventually this price could not cover fixed costs, for example. We're gonna see this in detail further on in this class. So here's the decision. If you sell, you're gonna make a negative margin. But this negative margin is better than if you don't sell anything, and in this case, you need to pay for the fixed costs. So remark the difference between a high technology market, a leader like Apple or Samsung that mark up the product, or car industry as well. You could imagine, we can't even imagine BMW selling their models competing within the market. No, they establish a markup over costs and expenses, and that's it. And they have market for that. Remark the difference between those markets and a commodity market, where the price is not priced, where the price is not formed. The price is taken. You take the price. You take the price of the market, and well, with the price of the market, you decide if you sell or if you don't. See the difference? Apple doesn't take market price. Apple established the price. A soybean trader doesn't establish the price. He takes the price. He takes the price that is being indicated, offered by the buyers, and he decides if he's going to sell or not. All of this is about pricing. And how about total cost of ownership? Costs, we have two main types of costs that we could consider. We have, as I said, direct costs, the costs that are directly linked to the production, inputs, raw material, energy, workforce working directly in the production lines, and so on. Those are direct costs. And we have the indirect costs, or expenses. What would be indirect costs? Indirect costs are the costs that are not directly linked to the production. In other words, let's imagine that we are talking about an industrial plant. We are talking about a plant that manufactures any type of product. If I turn off the plant, if I decide not to produce in that month, I will not have cost of raw material, right? I will not have cost of energy. I will not have cost of inputs because I'm not producing. But I will keep having costs related to payroll, HR, sales guys, financing team, etc., etc., etc. I will keep having costs related to rental, the facility rental, for example. I will keep having costs related to benefits that I pay to the employees. So those two different types of costs compound the most the main cost structure of any firm, of any business. But in addition to that, we have other costs that participate in the price formation of a good or service. We're going to see this in detail moving forward in this class. So this is those two different topics is what we're going to approach in the following minutes. Okay. All right. We have here basically 4 topics to be touched: price mechanisms, price methods, pricing methods, discounts, and total cost of ownership. Let's move forward and walk you guys through those 4 major topics here. Price mechanism. We can discuss price from several different perspectives, as I was just mentioning to you guys. But at the end of the day, what really matters for us is supply and demand relationship, S and D. You know, the number of suppliers versus the number of buyers of a certain product will define what type of pricing structure or strategy I will adopt. Okay, this is I'm used to say that this supply and demand law is the tougher one. You cannot unless you are in a monopolical market. There is nothing to discuss related to supply and demand relation. If you have a high level of suppliers versus a low level of demand, it's clear that suppliers will need to drop price in order to get demand. And the other way around is also true. If the demand is high and the supply side if the demand is high, and on the other hand you have a low level of suppliers, you can expect that the prices will rise because suppliers have options to sell. They will bargain with the buyers, trying to increase the price. We saw this in the pandemic, in the beginning of the pandemic, March last year. Of course, all of you guys remember what happened with masks, alcohol, with other equipment and products related to COVID protection. It simply vanished from the market. And we saw what happened with the price of the masks, for example. Several reports showing that suppliers were increasing prices. Why? Because the demand was impressively high. 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, I saw one politician, I don't remember, I guess it was the president per se, but I don't remember by heart. Someone saying that the fuel market should work with patriotism. Fuel market should work with patriotism. He was willing to say that, hey, gas stations, fuel distributors, you should decrease your price because you are Brazilian. But they are just pricing takers.
Professor, unfortunately, this logic and speech is common in Brazil, right? Due to populist ideas and politicians.
Exactly, Roberto. Exactly. This is from an economical standpoint, commercial standpoint, it's quite nonsense. Imagine that you are a seller. Imagine that you're gonna leave these guys. Much of you, many of you will leave this. You are in a position, a sales position. You are part of the commercial team of a company, and then you see a huge opportunity to sell at higher prices. What you're gonna do? You're gonna tell to your boss or to the boss of your boss, "Hey, let's keep the prices like that because the situation is this, that." No, if you have opportunity to
It's
increase the
interesting to compare with Argentina as well. What's happening there? It's very tragic, I would say. Like that, there's a problem of scarcity in I don't know the synonym, but I mean food, and the there is the problem of scarcity with these products,
Mhm.
and the government is trying to control prices, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they have already done this,
Mhm.
and the obvious consequence of this was more scarcity,
Exactly,
and
Roberto.
and the government is trying to punish the companies, the suppliers of food in the market for this.
Exactly what happened in Argentina, and we saw, we see actually Argentina is seeing a huge movement from firms and people, richer people, moving from Argentina to Uruguay. They are establishing their businesses in Uruguay because it's a free market. It's a much more friendly business environment, and they are moving their fortunes, their money to Uruguay as well because this is safer. Here in Brazil, we see this somehow as well. Look, this argument that I was mentioning. Hey, guys, be patriot. Don't increase the prices of the fuel because otherwise you're gonna have inflation and trucker strikes, etc. But if you guys remember, 3 years ago, more or less, sorry, a little bit more, it was at Dilma's period, 4 years ago, more or less, 5 years ago. If you remember, fuel price, the price of the fuel in Brazil was hardly controlled. Because of that, Petrobras almost went to bankruptcy. It was hardly controlled. And when you control the price of gasoline, for example, what happens with the price of ethanol? Ethanol cannot increase because, I mean, if you increase the ethanol price, if you are a miller and you increase the ethanol price, consumers will buy gasoline, but they are buying a subsidized gasoline. What happened with the ethanol industry in Brazil? All of them almost went to bankruptcy because the costs increased of ethanol production. The costs have increased over time, and they could not increase the price of ethanol. Why? Because government was holding the price of gasoline. With the price of gasoline artificially held, you could not increase the price of ethanol. Nobody thought about ethanol, guys. Brazil was not patriotic with the ethanol producers, and now the fuel sellers, they need to be patriotic. So at the end of the day, guys, supply and demand is what establish the price mechanisms, is what establish the price logics. If you want low prices, what do you need? What a country, a region, a firm needs? Competition. It's not policy, it's not politicians, it's not speeches. Competition. You need to create a business environment in which firms, entrepreneurs, they get confidence to invest their money to produce and to compete. If you compete, if you have a competitive market, you're going to have a plenty of offer, a plenty of demand, a balanced supply and demand relation, and then a reasonable price. This is the only way. The rest is bullshit. This is the argument of the ones. I'm not saying that I am pro or con on this, okay? I'm just saying that this is the argument of people, of economists that argue that Petrobras, Petrobras should be privatized, should go to the private sector, should be sold. Once Petrobras, uh, uh, if Petrobras would be sold, we would create, in the view of those guys, a more competitive market because the fuel production would not be anymore monopolized by one firm, one public firm. It would be open to several producers. And at the end of the day, you would have plenty of offers and decreasing price. So guys, price mechanism go necessarily through supply and demand relation. Why I'm highlighting, why I am underlining this so much? Because eventually you will, if you are in a pricing position, sales position, or in a position of buyer in procurement, eventually you would like to establish your prices. I want to have this markup margin, or I want to buy at this level, but you need to understand if the market allows you to do this. You cannot try to implement a unrealistic strategy vis-a-vis the relation between supply and demand. You need to be aware about the market that you are in, and based on this, then you establish the best pricing strategy. That can be pricing taking, you take the price, or it can be markup, for example. Okay. Here in this graph, I'm just illustrating how supply and demand relation is strong. March 2020, last year, we have a huge, impressive drop in the WTI derivative price of petroleum futures based in Texas. Okay, we had this huge drop. It went from $47 per barrel to $27 per barrel, $20 drop. Why does it happen? Basically because Saudi Arabia launched a price war. They started to produce. They said, hey, you know, I will produce my full capacity of petroleum. What happened with the market? Went dramatically down. Of course, Saudi Arabia tried to do this for political reasons and trying to create economical troubles to the petroleum producers' competitors. So the strategy of one supplier made the market to melt dramatically. I remember well the price of Petrobras in this period. Petrobras was at 27 reais per stock at Bovespa. It dropped to 17 reais per stock. It was a drop of 30% in one day last year. And after that, we had the situation with COVID getting harder, and then Petrobras dropped to 12 reais per stock, like in a period of 1 month or so, just because of this first drop, because of supply and demand relation. Okay. Well, related to pricing methods, what we have actually, guys, three main pricing strategies. We have first markup. We have second, cost plus, and we have contribution margin logics. I will walk you guys through these three main pricing strategies. Okay, markup we have already mentioned what it is, but let's develop a little bit further. What is markup? Markup is a margin that you establish over your total cost and expenses. So you have a number, you have a framework of costs and expenses. Let's say that you have $700 of cost of goods sold. One parenthesis here. Who could help me on understanding this? What would be cost of goods sold? COGS. What would be COGS of goods? Sorry, COGS of goods sold. Who could try to help me here? Any suggestion? Idea?
It's everything that you use in the production. For example, fixed costs, variable costs, right?
Yeah, almost there, Carolina. Almost there. Yeah, it's 90% right. It's everything that you use in the production, right? This includes all the variable costs, of course. The variable costs are the costs that are directly linked to production, and some fixed costs, not all fixed costs. Okay, when you get, for example, the salary of the operators that are working in the production line, they are working directly in the production. This is COGS. This is cost of goods sold. The salary of this guy, although fixed, it is part of the cost of goods sold. But the expenses, the salary of the HR or the sales guys or of the accounting department, although they are fixed, they are not COGS. They are expenses. So just this difference, but perfect. Your comment is, the idea is perfectly right. COGS are the costs directly related to production. Most part of them are variables. Not all of them, but most part of them are variables. Okay? Raw material, input, energy, and so on. Steam, vapor, and so on. So we have $700 cost of goods sold. We have SG&A, sales, selling, or sales, general, and administrative expenses, which are fixed expenses, but are not directly linked to the production. Here we have sales salary, accounting salary, HR salary. We have all the other expenses that are not directly linked to production. $1,500 per unit. Interest, income, and expenses. Interest, income, revenues that you have with interest that you charge from your customer, or costs that you have related to interest that you pay to your supplier, for example, $50 per unit. Other incomes and expenses, $50 per unit, and taxes, $100 per unit. So we have a total cost of ownership. Sorry, we have a total cost and expenses of $2,400 per unit. What is markup? Markup is a percentage of margin, 30%, for example, 15%, for example, that I establish as a reasonable gain that I want to get over this price. Simple like that. Okay, simple like that. Remark here, getting back to the beginning of this class, that we are not taking price here. We are dictating price. We are saying, hey, I want to get 30% over my costs and expenses by selling this product. If we have this strategy, means that probably we have bargaining power against our market. Means that the buyer eventually doesn't have bargaining power against ourselves. When we choose markup strategy, means that the market is favorable for you, allowing you to establish the margins that you wish. Okay. Here we have some mathematics explanation on markup that you can, guys, explore after. But basically, what those mathematics structure are saying is that, hey, I will establish a margin over the cost of my production and expenses. Here, for example, if the sales price is to $2,500 per unit, and we have a total cost and expenses of $2.4 thousand per unit, we have a markup of 1.04. So my price is 1.04 or 0.04% higher than my cost. Okay, same thing here, total cost and expenses over sales price means that I have a markup of 0.4% over my costs. Okay. All right, this is markup. Cost plus. Cost plus is very interesting and not that common. When pricing is given through a formula that contains one or more variables, it is common when the product or service is difficult to cost in advance. Let's try to understand that. Okay. Let's imagine we are using the agribusiness example here, but it is also applicable to chemicals industry, to fuel market, and several other industries. Imagine that you guys are a farmer. You have soybeans. We are in March, and I see that, and I want to sell my soybeans to be delivered in June. We are in March, and I want to deliver my soybeans in June. I want to close this deal today, but I don't know the price of June. I don't know the price. I don't know how much soybean is being quoted in CBOT, in Chicago Board of Trade, the stock exchange of Chicago, where the futures for commodities are priced. I don't know the price of the freight in June. I don't know the premium at port in June. And I don't know the FX, the currency, how much Brazilian real will be valued against dollar in June. I don't know. I don't have any view of any of those variables. How could I set up a contract in March to deliver a product in June if I don't know the components of the price? We can establish a formula to price this product. I can make a deal with, for example, Cargill or JBS or Bunge or BRF. I can make this deal. Hey, I agree that I will deliver to you 6,000 tons of soybean in June. And I agree that we have the price open for now. But we need to establish the formula that will form my price. So farmer or supplier and buyer dealt like this, and both of them started to assess the market. As soon as CBOT, the price quotation in Chicago Board of Trade, reached a good level for farmer, as soon as freight reached a good level for farmer, as soon as price premium at port reached a good level for farmer, and as soon as FX reached a good level for farmer, farmer says, hey, I want to fix the price at these, and these levels. Then you fix the price according to the levels of CBOT, freight, premium at port, and FX at that moment. For this guy, it's easy because it's just a matter for him to make the hedge. So he's not going to have a profit or loss on this. He's going to just hedge according to what the supplier is requesting. Again, this kind of formula is very common for chemicals as well. I used in my prior experiences as professional to buy methanol. It's an imported type of alcohol used in industrial production processes. And Mitsubishi, which is one of the global suppliers, they had a type of contract like that. Hey, I agreed to supply you with 10,000 tons of methanol per month, price to be established according to a formula. Which formula was that? It was a formula that embraced price of ethanol in the international market minus a discount, established discount, plus sea freight, plus FX. Important. We need to have, as soon as we have a formula for pricing, we need to make sure that the components of the formula are clear and public. It can be something that the buyer sees, have access to the information, but the seller doesn't, right? The formula has to be something, the component of the formula need to be something that is clear for everybody, that you can publicly consult and see what's the level of that item in that moment. Okay. For freight, we have scenarios like that. For railroad freight, Rumo, for example, important railroad service provider in Brazil, Rumo may set up a take-or-pay contract with you, promising you that you're going to have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 tons per week or per month, space availability in the train linking Mato Grosso to Santos, for example. And Rumo may establish a formula to price the cost of freight that you need to pay month over month. This price can be linked, for example, to the truck freight price. Can be, for example, hey, it's the price that I will charge you to use the railroad will be truck freight price, frete de caminhão, the road price, minus 20%. It's a formula. So how much I'll be paying Rumo in June to move 30,000 tons of soybeans or any other type of bulk? It's going to be truck freight in June minus 20% or 30%. It's a formula, clear formula. Okay, this is very common for several markets. When you can't buy spot market, when you need to make sure that you're gonna, sometimes you as a supplier, you need to make sure that you're gonna have a flow of sales month over month, week over week. You need to make sure in order to manage your supply chain, to manage your warehouse, to manage your logistics. As the price of the deferred months are not yet given, you can set up a long-term contract like that using a pricing formula to establish the price month over month. BRF, it's not by mistake, and JBS, they use this a lot with soybean meal, which is one important raw material, feedstock actually for poultry and cattle and swine. They need an amount of soybean meal, farelo de soja, per month to serve the several factories that they have in Brazil. They know the number. I need 30,000, 40,000 per month soybean meal to serve my factories in south of Brazil or in the Midwest of Brazil, etc. They know the volume that they need per month, but they don't know the price. So they agree with the suppliers the volume, the quantity. Hey, you need to supply me 4,000 tons of soybean per month over 12 months. And the price will be agreed over a formula that encompasses, for example, again, freight, FX, international price of the soybean meal, and so on. Okay, very useful cost plus method. We have here another example for the fixed income pricing. Okay, fixed income pricing. We have pre-tax, pre-rate, and we have post-defined rate, right? When you buy a CDB, when you make an investment, you can do this buying a bond that pays you a pre-established price, a flat interest rate, or that pays you a post-established price, post-established rate. And we have scenarios in which we have a hybrid model in which I pay you part flat rate, pre-established, and part post-established rate. This is a formula, pricing formula. How much I will get from Banco BMG SA CDBs within 3 years. 4.8% flat, unchangeable, plus IPCA formula. Okay. All right. All right. Here the third, and I would say for me one of the most interesting logics, pricing logics that we have, contribution margin. Who could help me on this? What would be contribution margin? What would be contribution margin, please?
Basically, is the money that how can I say results? I don't know, that is left for your fixed expenses and costs.
Perfect.
So after you deduce right, or reduce from the revenue, the variable costs and expenses, then you have the gross profit,
Mhm.
and then this is what is left for paying the fixed costs and expenses. That's the contribution margin, right?
Perfect, Roberto. Is exactly like that. Exactly. Roberto defined it with all the words. What is contribution margin? Contribution margin is the margin. Sorry, is the margin that pays my fixed costs and expenses. Here we have to work with the notion of two different types of costs. Let's forget for a minute direct and indirect costs. Let's work with fixed and variable cost. Fixed and variable cost. What is variable cost? Variable costs are the costs that are directly involved in the production of a good or service. Fixed costs and expenses are the costs that are not better. Fixed and expenses and costs are the costs that, regardless the production, will always happen. Variable costs will happen only when I have production. Generally, they are linked directly to the production. And fixed and costs and expenses are the costs that will happen regardless if you produce or not. What Roberto said is contribution margin is the margin that I have after paying the variable costs. If I pay the variable costs and I have a profit in the outstanding balance between sales price and variable costs, if I have a positive margin here, this margin will contribute to pay the fixed costs and expenses. If this margin is big enough to pay the fixed costs and expenses, and even like that, providing me profit, means that I have net profit. Okay? This is the logic behind the contribution margin. And when we speak on contribution margin, generally we think on contribution margin per unit of product. This is much better to think. So one iPhone, one iPhone. How much when I sell one iPhone, how much this sale contributes to pay my fixed costs and expenses, for example. I will show mathematically through a spreadsheet that I believe will make this idea, these logics much more clear for you. But before that, let's just visit the main types of fixed costs and expenses. We have facilities rent rate fixed, $200,000 per month. Regardless if I produce or not, regardless if I sell or not, imagine now we are living in a red phase here in São Paulo. We have several stores that are closed. Probably they will keep paying the facilities rent fee, unless they negotiate or renegotiate with the owner. They will need to pay for the rental, although they are not open, they are not selling. So this is a fixed cost for the business. Insurance, same thing. I pay 5,000 reais per month, and this is flat, fixed. Security firm, the firm that takes care of my business from a security standpoint, 10,000 reais per month. Regardless if I produce or not something in my facility, I will pay for that. Regular maintenance, gardening, water treatment, and so on, I pay 5,000 reais per month. And again, regardless if I produce something within my plant or not. Plant staff and salaries, 100,000 per month, dollars, fixed. And SG&A, same thing. So let's imagine here in this scenario that we have 407,000 dollars per month fixed costs and expenses. This cost will happen regardless if I sell something, if I produce something or not. Let's make some scenarios here with one spreadsheet to help us understanding this better, this logic. So we have here, guys, this spreadsheet is available for you if you like to practice or to check, to search. This is available for you at eClass. We have here the total fixed and costs and expenses, dollar per month. Here we have the variable costs and expenses per unit. So raw materials, secondary inputs, heat consumption, water, commissions, others. I have $275 per unit to produce 1 unit of my product. If I don't produce nothing, I will not have this cost. Otherwise, I do have. Otherwise, I do have. Let's imagine that my factory, my plant, has capacity of 10,000 units per month production. Okay. Let's first imagine that we are gonna produce 0.5% of the capacity. I will produce within the month 5,000 units. So 50% idle capacity or 50% usage capacity. My variable costs per unit remain the same, right? $275 per unit. It's the same. If I produce 1 unit, it's the same. If I produce 10,000 units, it's the same. $275 per unit. So let's keep 5,000 units per month. However, my fixed cost per unit will change, right? My fixed cost per month is $470,000 per month. If I produce 5,000 units per month, I will have $470,000 per month divided by 5,000 units. That gives me $94 per unit fixed cost. So if I produce more, what happens with my fixed costs and expenses? It is diluted. From 94, it dropped to 47 if I increase my production to 100%. Let's keep these at 5%. At 50%. At 50% usage capacity, my total cost per unit, 275 plus $94 per unit, will be $369 per unit, variable plus fixed costs. Again, if I increase my production, what happens with my total cost? It decreases. If I decrease my production, what happens with my total cost? It increases, basically because I have a change in the fixed cost per unit. Let's keep these at $5,000 and 5,000 units produced per month. Let's make some assessments here, okay? Let's imagine, guys, that we have someone first offering a buyer offering a price of $300 per unit on my product. He's paying $300 per unit. $300 per unit. Let's imagine that we are in a tough market, very competitive market, okay? We have several suppliers for few buyers. So bargaining power is not with us. We cannot establish markup, okay? My buyer is offering me $300 per unit. Let's imagine that we have just two options: sell at this level or not to sell and shut off the plant. What would you do? $300 per unit. Look, if the price is $300 per unit and my variable costs are 275, means that this price covers the variable costs, and we have still a small margin of $25 per unit to pay my fixed costs. So if I sell 5,000 units having a contribution margin of 25 contribution margin times 5,000 units, I will have a total contribution margin of $125,000 per month. This contribution margin will help me to pay this fixed cost that I will have producing or not. If I don't produce anything, my result will be $407,000 per month negative. If I sell at this level, although I don't cover 100% of the total cost, I help to reduce the loss within the month. Despite having $470,000 per month cost, I will have a loss of $345,000 per month, which is better than $470,000 per month. Contribution margin here helped me to reduce the loss that I would have if I didn't sell anything. This is the logic, which is exactly what Roberto said. This is the logic behind contribution margin. Remark that in this scenario, very competitive market, I cannot think about, hey, having a 30% markup on my total cost. No, because here I am a supplier in a market that has a plenty of suppliers. So my alternative is to manage my costs in order to run reducing as much as I can my fixed costs. Okay, if we make an assessment through the graphics, we can have here comparison between fixed costs and expenses and contribution margin. So although I have $407,000 per month total costs fixed and total fixed and expenses costs of $407,000, I had a contribution margin of $125,000 at the end of the day, reducing my loss from $470,000 to $345,000 per month. Other comparison here, comparison between sales price per unit and variable cost per unit. My price is $300 per unit. My variable cost is $275 per unit, means that I am profiting here $25 per unit contribution margin. That will be converted when I multiply by the quantity of the products I sell. It's converted to $125,000 per month. Other graphs to help us to understand. My sales price is $300 per unit, but my total cost, considering here, variable costs plus fixed costs and expenses is $369 per unit. No doubt here that I will have a negative P&L, I will have a negative result. Although this result is lower than the result I would have if I didn't produce and sold, and if I didn't produce and sell anything. Okay? Is that understood, guys, for you? Was that clear? Remark how important is this type of logic when you are in the buy side or when you are in the sell side, when you are in the procurement environment. If you are a seller, you need to have this knowledge in order to price correctly your product. Eventually, the moment is not good, and the focus in this moment is to reduce the loss, not to have profit, but to reduce the loss. And you reduce the loss, making contribution margin that helps you to pay the fixed and costs and expenses. Okay. There will have moments in which the market is very favorable, and then you're gonna sell at full margin. You're gonna have a contribution margin that will pay your variable costs and that will pay your fixed costs. There is just one thing that can never ever happen regarding contribution margin. What type of price I never can sell?
What do you mean?
There is one type of price, there is one level of price that is forbidden for me. I cannot sell below this price. In general.
I'm gonna say ponto de equilíbrio, break-even point.
Exactly.
So that's the price referring to the this point, this break-even point.
Exactly. When we sell below the break-even point, actually it's not exactly below the break-even point, because when we say break-even point, what is break-even point here? What is break-even point in here in this scenario? 5,000 units produced, variable costs of $275 per unit, and $94 per unit fixed cost. The break-even point here is $379 per unit. Below this level, I'll be below my break-even point, as Roberto said, and I will have negative P&L. I will have losses. Above the break-even point, I will have profit. Break-even point is the point in which I cover my fixed and my variable costs. But there is a point here that I can sell below my break-even point. I can sell. In this example, I am selling below my break-even point. My break-even point is $369 per unit, and I'm selling at $300 per unit. This is below my break-even point. Although this is still a good option against the scenario in which I don't sell anything and I have to pay for 100% of my fixed costs and expenses. I don't know if it's clear the difference, guys, for you. Okay, I can operate, depending on the circumstances of the market, I can operate below my break-even point in order to reduce the losses. What cannot never happen is to sell below my variable costs. I never can sell below my variable costs. Remark, I have fixed costs plus variable costs. The two together will give me the break-even point, as Roberto mentioned. I can have a price that, although doesn't cover the break-even point.
So the difference is that you can admit for a period to have losses in your business, right? Or in other words, operating below your break-even point, but you can never admit having a negative contribution margin. Is that right?
Perfect, Roberto.
So
Perfect.
that's the answer, I believe.
Perfect. Perfect.
Mhm.
You never can have negative contribution margin. Exactly.
At first, I thought that it was the same thing. Like, but then after explaining it, I understood the difference.
Yeah, there is a smooth difference, but important. And you're right. We never can operate below or in a negative contribution margin. When we operate in a negative contribution margin, look what happens. Let's imagine that my price is, my variable cost is $275 per unit. Let's imagine that the price that my buyer is offering me is 200. $200 per unit is below my variable cost. So I will have necessarily here a negative contribution margin. What does it mean in terms of business having a negative contribution margin? Means that for each unit that I produce, I am losing $75 per unit. Means that my variable costs are higher than my price. For example, means that my raw material plus inputs plus chemicals plus all the other variable costs are higher than the price of the product. You know what I mean? You are selling something that is cheaper than the cost to produce. You lose money for each unit that you sell in this case. So you can never, you shall never work if, one, the contribution margin is negative, as Roberto said, or the same thing, but said in another way, if your price doesn't cover the variable costs. You need to have your pricing covering at least your variable costs. Look, if your price doesn't cover your variable costs, your result will be net margin, will be total net margin. It's not here, it's not per unit, right? It's per month. Okay, it's wrong. I will make the correction here. If I work at $200 per unit price and my variable cost is $275 per unit, I will have a negative result in the month of $845,000 in 1 month. If I didn't sell anything at this price, my result would be $407,000 per month, which is exactly my fixed costs. So in a scenario in which I have negative contribution margin, guys, it's better to shut off the plant, turn off the plant, and don't produce. You pay for the fixed costs and expenses and wait this terrible moment to go away. Okay? All right. Any doubts, guys? Any comment here? Any suggestion or no? All right. As I said, this spreadsheet is available for you if you want to manage this whenever you want. If some of you will eventually work with pricing in an industry or in a retail sector or in logistics, this knowledge might be useful for you, very useful for you. Okay. And it's not everybody that has this notion, although very simple, this notion, this reading on contribution margin. We are used to think on the net profit, the profit after all the costs, but eventually you need to work when you are working in a tougher scenario. Eventually you need to, your job is to reduce, to mitigate the losses, to lose less. And then contribution margin is a very special concept and tool. All right. Let's get back to the presentation. Just 1 minute here. Okay. All right. Contribution margin, we already discussed. So this is just about contribution margin. Let's go to the topic number 3 from 4. Discounts. When a supplier might provide buyer a discount. We have several scenarios, but here we point out 4 most important scenarios in which we have the likelihood of discounts per unit. Okay. Prompt payment. When we have a cash payment, prompt payment, a cash in hand sale, it's reasonable to think that the price in this payment condition will be lower than the price in a deferred payment term. If a buyer asks you, hey, how much your price if I pay cash, prompt payment? And if the same buyer asks, how much is the price for this good for payment within 6 months? It's reasonable to think that prices will be different, right? Why cash price is cheaper, generally cheaper than deferred payment price? Can anyone help me? Why the cash price, the prompt payment, is generally cheaper than a sale in which I sell at term to the buyer to pay me in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever?
Because at term, many things happen, including like the money devaluation, and you also, like, if you pay by credit card, for example, then you have to pay the tax for the taxa, the credit card.
Perfect. Exactly, Luisa. Money has a cost over time, right? If I am a supplier of someone and this guy asks me to pay in 6 months or 12 months, I need to raise money through debit, getting money in the banks, or through equity, asking to the shareholders to apply money in the company in order to support this period in which I will have sold but not received. Okay, it's very interesting that in the car industry we see this a lot. We see, for example, hey, buy this car, any car dealer, buy this car. We are selling this car cash price, but you can pay in 36 installments. Cash price for this car, but you can pay in 36 installments, in 36 months. Is that really true that there is no interest rate in the price? Try this. Hey, dealer, I want to buy cash now, cash in hands, cash in a box here for you. What's the discount? I guarantee that you're gonna have a discount over the price in which you can pay cash price within 36 months payment. In this case, the difference is that the interest rate is inside the price, right? He says that there is no interest rate, there is no additional cost, but the cost is inside of the price. If you get cash in hand and you ask for that product to be paid prompt payment, I bet the supplier will provide you discount. Okay. Quantity. Quantity is quite logic, right? If I buy 10 units of something, the price per unit will be X. If I buy 100 units of one thing, given the size of the lot, the size of the order, purchase order, it's reasonable to expect that the supplier will apply a discount per unit. Because, I mean, it's better to sell a lot of product in one shot than selling small lots to several buyers. Okay, so it's expected to us to have a discount over quantity, a discount per unit over higher purchase quantity. Okay, it doesn't happen though when the market is again dominated by monopoly. For example, if you try to buy steel today from CSN or from Usiminas or from ArcelorMittal, as the demand in Brazil is too high for steel, and as we have just few suppliers, no matter if you are buying 2 tons or 20 tons of steel from those guys, the price will be the same and high because they have plenty of demand. No reason to decrease the price per unit as you are buying quantity, because they will sell everything they have, regardless if you are the buyer or if the buyer is your concurrent, is your competitor. Okay. Status. When the customer is an agent of interest of the supplier, for example, a dealer, it is likely that the producer adjusts the price by means of a discount. After all, dealers and other intermediaries represent the brand and open the market for the seller and supplier. So depending on the status of the buyer, you might apply a discount in order, for example, in this case, to have a amplification of brand representation, brand propaganda, and so on. Okay. And special discounts. It is common that supplier sellers decide to offer discounts according to the moment or according to the seasonality. Air ticket prices is an example of these. I mean, in a normal situation, standard situation, not in a situation like that, but in a standard situation, air ticket prices are higher when we have high demand. June, July, December, January, February, which are the school vacations. And you have a lower price when you are in the low season. Okay, so depending on the seasonality, you might have higher or lower prices, higher or lower discounts. All right. And and to finish this class today, guys, we have the concept of total cost of ownership. The concept of total cost of ownership. In addition to fixed costs, variable costs, direct and indirect costs, expenses, and so on, we have other types of costs that might be considered when you price your product. When you price your product, all of those costs together form the total cost of ownership, the total cost of a certain product or good. Remark, here's some examples of direct and indirect costs that together form the total cost of ownership. First, freight. If I sell the product to you, buyer, to take the product in my installation, the price will be one FOB condition, right? FOB condition. On the other hand, if I sell the product to be delivered to you, CIF condition, I will include in the price the cost of the freight from my unit, from my facility to your facility, as the price is on me. Upfront costs of equipment and installations. Upfront costs of equipment and installation. Example, low installation costs may be followed by high maintenance and upgrading costs over the life of the project. Okay. If I decide not to invest in a high quality installation, if the installation is poor and I economize by having a poor installation, I may eventually have high maintenance costs or upgrading costs because the installation was poor. So it's likely that the product, the goods will be affected by malfunctioning. Okay. Training is a cost, the cost related to training, to train your buyer, for example, to him to use properly the product, is a cost that needs to be inside the price. Cost of support, technical assistance, is also a cost that needs to be inside of the cost of the product. Upgrading, if you forecast periodic upgradings, you need to also include these into the cost of the product when you sell. Repairs, the same thing. Spare parts, costs, and lead times, same thing. Here, one important cost that needs to be considered when you sell your product. Cost of non-performance. Depending on the product, the good that you are selling to your buyer, some goods are essential to the economical activity of the buyer. So the buyer needs these goods to him to generate profit. If the good that you sold doesn't work properly, the buyer will not be able to produce what he produces, and ultimately he can lose profit. Then we may get to a discussion of loss of profit, cessão de lucros, lucros cessantes. It's a very sensitive discussion when the buyer says, hey, because of the malfunctioning of your product, because your product didn't serve me as it was expected to, I could not keep my business running for 20 days, 30 days, 60 days, whatever. And because of that, I could not get revenues, and then I could not get profit. So I will charge you, my supplier, loss of profit. This is a hard discussion. Several contracts have forecasts, actually, that in any circumstances, when you are a supplier and you have the bargaining power, you may establish in your contract that in any circumstances, loss of profit will be covered. But again, it's a hard discussion. And possible cost of non-performance, which is pretty much similar to this one. All right. We are getting to the end of this class, guys, today. Before letting you go, let me make the check of the presence here, and then you guys are free to go. Just a minute here. Just a minute here. André Frangipani? No. Arthur? Bruna? No. Bruno Carpinelli? No. Bruno Cunha?
I'm here, Professor.
Good. Camila Freitas? No. Carolina is there. Okay. Cristiano?
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Diego?
Hello,
Diego.
teacher.
Hey, Diego.
Hi, Professor. I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem, Carolina. Camila.
It's Camila.
No problem, Camila.
Thank you.
No problem. Diego. Fernando.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Gabriel.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Gustavo. No. Hector.
Presente, professor.
Okay. Hector. Isabel is there. Okay. Jenny.
Yeah.
Okay. Juliana is there. Okay. Lucas Lichand.
Hello, Professor.
Hey, Lucas. Lucas Botino.
I'm here.
Maria de Carvalho Fernandes.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Maria. Maria Eugênia.
Hi, Professor.
Hey, Maria. Okay. Maria Luisa.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Marina.
I'm here, Professor.
Okay. Mário.
Hi, present.
Hey, Mário. Matheus Barros.
Here, Professor.
Ok. Matheus Guedes. Oh. Rafael is there. Renan.
Here, Professor.
Okay. Roberto is there. Victor. Emmanuel. Oh.
I'm here, Professor.
Okay. Okay, perfect, Victor. And lastly, William Umada.
Here, Professor.
Okay, guys, thanks for your attention. Keep safe and have a very great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Professor,
Professor. Bye.
thank you.
Posso tirar uma
Thank
dúvida
you.
rapidão?
Claro.
Beleza. É conceitual mesmo. por exemplo, uma situação em que você tem um produto e nesse mercado você não é líder, você é uma empresa tipo seguidora, né? E tem uma preocupação, uma necessidade muito clara de que o seu produto precisa ficar mais barato, né? Isso é uma coisa que, tipo, certeza, assim, independente de outras coisas, ele precisa estar mais barato para ter alguma condição de competição, tal, no mercado. Só que, assim, o componente principal, um dos componentes principais do seu equipamento, do seu produto, né? Ele é feito fora de casa, né? Você compra ele, traz, e aí você vai transformando ele, né? Incorporando outros componentes de outros fornecedores e partes dele você mesmo que faz também. Então, mas o principal, as partes principais são feitas fora, né? E aí eu queria entender, tipo, quando você tem essa necessidade de deixar o produto mais barato, né? E no caso, é um produto que você tem intenção também de manter no portfólio e tal. Como é que fica como é que você se baseia para tomar a decisão de tipo trazer tal, sei lá, tal atividade para casa ou manter fora, entendeu? Só queria ter uma noção assim básica.
Cara, depende muito da circunstância, mas eu vou falar de forma geral aqui, o que eu faria, né? Bom, se o custo do produto está fora, né, em relação aos concorrentes, né, se o seu preço não está tão bom e você identificou que pode ser por conta dos itens que você compra de terceiros, né, eu acho que você teria que fazer um exercício de estimação dos custos relativos a fazer esse produto em casa. Então, assim, primeiro, o que você precisaria para fazer ele em casa? Estou imaginando aqui, né, um
equipamento,
negócio
né, máquina, essas coisas, né?
Exato, equipamento, máquina, instalação. Então, vamos pensar nesses 3 itens, né? A forma de pagamento, né? Então, assim, você consegue financiar isso daí por longo prazo e com uma taxa de juros razoável ou não? Você precisa pagar tudo na cabeça e o custo é alto. Então, porque se você conseguir financiar isso daí em 12, 13, 15, 20 parcelas, sei lá, 30 parcelas, de repente você pode incluir o custo dessa parcela no custo de fixo da sua operação por esse período, entendeu?
Sim.
E daí você faz um cenário, faz uma simulação. Vem cá, olha, cenário 1, eu estou comprando de terceiros, eu pago nesse item, sei lá, X reais por unidade, né? A minha matriz de custo comprando esse produto fica em, sei lá, 3 mil reais por mês. Se eu fizer em casa, eu não vou comprar mais do terceiro, vou comprar só matéria-prima para produzir esse bem, e ao invés de pagar X reais para o terceiro, eu vou ter um desconto de, sei lá, 50%. Além disso, só que por um lado eu vou ter um desconto de 50% e por outro eu vou ter um ganho, a adição de um custo que é a parcela mensal pelos equipamentos que eu comprei. Se essa conta for melhor do que comprar do terceiro, talvez esse seja o caminho. Eu faria, de maneira bem simples, alguma coisa nesse sentido.
Entendi. Tipo uma análise VPL, assim.
Exatamente.
Simulando cenários, né? E tendo
simples.
noção também, né, dos recursos e capacidades necessárias também, né?
Exatamente.
Obrigado pela explicação. É que eu tinha aquele vício, assim, aquela tendência de achar que, tipo assim, sempre quando você vai trazer para casa, o negócio ele vai ficar mais barato, mas, tipo, não sei se é verdade, entendeu?
Não necessariamente. Você precisa fazer um exame muito bem detalhado, porque basicamente esse exame vai passar pelos custos de investimento e depois os custos de operação que você vai ter fazendo isso em casa, entendeu? São 2 custos diferentes, né? O quanto você vai gastar para investir, comprar as máquinas, ter a instalação para botar as máquinas lá dentro, esse é um custo. E o segundo custo vem cá, quanto é que eu vou gastar mensalmente para operar esse produto? Às vezes, você fala, poxa, o meu fornecedor está me cobrando caro, mas depois você percebe, poxa, não é tão caro. Depois de fazer esse exercício, entendeu?
Não, legal. Eu vou ter uma visão mais abrangente disso aí. Valeu, professor. Obrigado, viu?
Imagina, cara. Falou. Até dia 6, né?
Tchau.
Falou, abraço.
Até dia 6, verdade.
Tchau, tchau.
Beleza. Tchau, tchau.